Yes, Miss Tate.
Members of the jury, ask yourselves the questions I asked the defendant. Why should these two young girls lie? Now, this is not the classic indecency case of a girl allowing herself to be picked up, regretting it, and then resorting to wild accusations in order to keep her reputation. Nor is it the case of a girl spurned and doing anything in order to get her own back. Miss Hayes was a quiet, efficient secretary who had endured months of torment before she finally decided that she had had enough and brought this complaint. Now, she has been subjected to prolonged and intense cross-examination, but not once did she falter in her assertion that what she says took place did in fact take place. Now, as for the defendant's undoubted public service and reputation, that is completely irrelevant. He is not being tried for his activities as a mayor and a councillor, but for his activities with a young and patently innocent girl. And I ask you, members of the jury, to find this case proved.
Yes, Mr. Dealer.
Members of the jury, plainly there is a direct contradiction of evidence in this case. Miss Hayes said my client assaulted her, and my client says he did not. It's as simple as that. So how do you decide who is telling the truth? Now, I suggest, members of the jury, that when you examine the evidence, you must also examine those who gave it. Now, let's take the prosecution witnesses first. There was Mrs. Hayes, the complainant's mother, who took her daughter to the police station sharpish. Now, you will remember that she had recently lost a dispute with Councillor Bolton's housing committee. Now, this could be reason enough for her seemingly hasty action. Next, there was Miss Foster, the complainant's office colleague, a lively, attractive girl, but also one who told you that she did not like Councillor Bolton. And I suggest the reasons are not difficult to see. She had worked at the office longer than Miss Hayes, yet Miss Hayes was engaged for the better job. And secondly, and just as significantly, Councillor Bolton was oblivious to her obvious charms. According to her, he never so much as patted her on the shoulder. Now, this could have niggled her, albeit unconsciously. She also admits that she never actually saw my client's hand down Miss Hayes's back. She only saw it when it appeared from behind him. So in the light of this, and in the light of her rather frosty relationship with my client, isn't it possible that she's jumped to all the wrong conclusions? The prosecution's third witness was, of course, Miss Hayes herself. Now, everyone seems to agree that she's a highly efficient secretary, and I've no doubt she's an extremely nice girl. But I do suggest there are certain flaws in her makeup which are very important to this case. According to her mother, she is quiet and reserved, and has had very little, if any, experience of men, and in fact tends to be rather frightened and suspicious of them. And according to my client, who backs this up, she's timid and very easily upset. And as I said at the outset, ladies and gentlemen, it is all a question of credibility. The credibility of a young, inexperienced, impressionable girl and a man, a mature man, of immense achievement and reputation. Not once in 25 years has the finger of suspicion ever been pointed at my client. Not once. Now, we all know there's a proverb, there is no smoke without fire. And it is on the basis of this often cruel proverb that Councillor Bolton now stands condemned by many people. I ask you not to add to his misfortune by bringing in a verdict of guilty, and on the evidence to bring in a verdict of not guilty.
Members of the jury, the defendant is charged with an indecent assault upon Miss Hayes, contrary to Section 14 of the Sexual Offences Act. It is alleged that he put his hand on her back, inside her blouse, and that, indeed, he touched her breast. Now, in such a case, the law specifies that there must be some handling which is indecent, together with an indecent motive. Thus, a man who touches the breast of a woman by accident because he is jolted in a crowd is not committing an indecent assault. But no innocent motive has been, or indeed can be suggested in a case like this. And although this is a matter for you to decide, you may think that if Miss Hayes' story is true, then you should convict. But is Miss Hayes' story true? That's the question you have to ask. You must remember that the prosecution must prove its case beyond all reasonable doubt, and that if you have any doubt as to the truth of Miss Hayes' story, then you must acquit the defendant. Now, it's difficult to see any motive, any reason why Miss Hayes should invent her story, and indeed I do not think that Mr. Dealey really does suggest that she is deliberately telling an untrue story about the afternoon of the alleged assault. What has been suggested is that Miss Hayes, her innocent imagination, perhaps fired by Miss Foster's repeated warnings about bosses, was under a delusion about what actually happened. There is, you may think, no corroboration for Miss Hayes' evidence. Indeed, Miss Foster admitted in the end that she could not say that she actually saw the defendant's hand inside Miss Hayes' blouse. So the question, you may think, is, did the defendant, as he says, simply put his hand on the back of Miss Hayes' chair and touch her by accident? And did Miss Hayes imagine the rest? Now, Miss Tate has told you that you must have no regard to the accused's fine personal and public record. Now that, with all due respect to Miss Tate, is quite wrong. Such a record is a factor to be considered when you are weighing the evidence. Men and women who enjoy the respect of society are often very conscious that they can lose that respect by a single sideways step from the straight and narrow path of proper conduct. Now, if you think that the accused had such an awareness, then you may think it very improbable that he could do what it is alleged he has done. But, members of the jury, you know as well as I do that few people, great or small, are without any weakness or flaw. Our history abounds with the broken reputations of great men and women who have done wrong. To put this matter of character another way, members of the jury, if you find yourselves wavering or uncertain, you should allow the defendant's good character to weigh the scales in his favour, and you should acquit him. But if you are satisfied as to the guilt of the defendant, then it is your duty to convict. You will now retire and consider your verdict.
All rise. All rise. Will the foreman please stand? Members of the jury, have you reached a verdict upon which you are all agreed?
Yes.
Do you find the prisoner, Edward Bolton, guilty or not guilty of indecent assault?
Not guilty.
And is that the verdict of you all?
It is.
Thank you. The accused will stand.
You are discharged, Councillor Bolton. May I say that I trust you will put this unhappy affair behind you and that you will continue unaffected and unabated in your public service.
Thank you very much.
Members of the jury, may I extend the court's thanks for your attendance and your patience.
All rise.
Next week, a chance for you to join another jury in assessing the facts when our cameras return to watch a leading case in the Crown Court.